The night started like any other. I had just wrapped up a stressful week at work and was looking forward to some downtime with my colleagues. We decided to hit the bar after our shift, the usual place just a few blocks down. The vibe was easy, the drinks were cold, and for a few hours, I could forget about the grind. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary, but when I walked into that bar, I immediately saw her, Emma, my wife, the woman I had shared my life with for the past 5 years. I saw her from across the room, surrounded by a group of men. My stomach turned when I realized what was happening. They were all laughing, leaning in too close, and then I saw it, her hand placed firmly on one of the men's chests, the same man who had a hand resting just inches from her waist. I froze. My heart dropped to my stomach. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room, and all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. I didn't know what I was witnessing, but it was clear she was enjoying it. There was no hesitation. She was flirting, touching, letting them invade her personal space, and none of it seemed like an accident. She caught sight of me standing there, frozen in place. The smile on her face faltered, but only for a moment. One of the men, tall and cocky, placed his hand on her ass. That was when everything inside me snapped. The anger rose up, boiling inside me. How could she? After everything we had been through, how could she do this to me? I moved toward her without thinking, my colleagues' voices fading into the background. The world felt distant, like I was moving through molasses. I shoved the guy aside, my hands shaking with rage. "You're acting like a cheap whore," I spat, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm disgusted to even look at you." Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment, I saw guilt flash across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "What the hell is wrong with you? Is this how you repay me?" My voice shook with fury. She stood there, eyes darting between me and the man she had just been with. Her lips parted as if she was about to say something, but before she could, the guy I had shoved stepped toward me, his face red with anger. "It's just dancing, man. Chill out," he sneered. "You don't own her." That was all it took for the rage to boil over. Without warning, he lunged at me. I barely saw him coming. His fist connected with my face, and everything went black. I woke up to a pounding headache and a thick metallic taste in my mouth. It took me a few seconds to regain my bearings, my vision blurred, the room spinning. When I finally managed to sit up, I realized I was no longer at the bar. I was in a hospital room. I looked down, and the sight of my blood-soaked shirt made my stomach turn. The pain from the stab wound was like a distant gnawing sensation, intense but manageable. The doctors had stitched me up, and I was alive. Barely. But that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was realizing betrayal I had just witnessed wasn't a mistake. Emma, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted, had cheated on me, and not with just anyone. No, it was her co-worker, the guy from the bar, the one who had the audacity to run at me like some kind of warrior. He had a knife, and I had the wound to prove it. I sat there in a hospital bed, replaying everything in my mind over and over. My thoughts kept returning to her face, the way she looked when she saw me standing there, shoving that bastard aside, the way her smile faltered. But she didn't apologize. She didn't defend me. She just looked at me like I was an inconvenience. That was when I realized something. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just her touching and flirting with another man. It wasn't even the fact that she didn't care about how I felt. It was the indifference, the complete disregard for everything we had built. She wasn't even sorry. She wasn't even trying to hide it. It was just another night for her, and she didn't care who saw or who got hurt. I closed my eyes and let the anger wash over me. And that's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to take this lying down. I wasn't going to beg for her love. I wasn't going to ask her why she did it. No, I was going to make her regret everything. Not just for cheating on me, but for thinking she could walk all over me without facing any consequences. By the time I was discharged from the hospital, I had already begun making plans. I wasn't going to confront her just yet. I was going to hit her where it hurt most. I knew her. I knew how she thought. And I knew exactly how to destroy her. I spent the next few days doing everything quietly. I didn't tell anyone about what had happened. Not my friends, not my family. I kept my cards close, planning every move. The first step was getting back in control of my finances. I started by freezing all of our joint accounts. No more access to the money. No more access to the life she thought she had control over. She wouldn't be able to touch a dime without my say-so. The second step was humiliation. I wasn't just going to let her live her life like nothing had happened. I was going to make sure she felt the consequences of her actions. A few days later, when I finally saw her again, she walked into the house, and immediately I could see the guilt on her face. She stood there looking at me as if she was trying to gauge whether I was going to forgive her or not. I didn't scream or cry. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her. Her eyes darted around nervously. "John," she began, her voice soft, apologetic. She was trying to sound like the woman I once knew, but I wasn't buying it. I let the silence stretch out for a moment longer, making sure she felt every second of it. Then I said in a low, calm voice, "We're done." She blinked in surprise, her lips trembling. "What do you mean we're done?" she asked, her voice growing louder. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I made a mistake. We can fix this, okay? Please, let's fix it." "No," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You made your choice. You made your bed. Now you're going to lie in it." But I wasn't done. I was just getting started. I had the leverage now. The first step was emotion. Now, the real revenge would begin. The silence hung thick between us, the weight of my words settling in the air. Emma looked at me, disbelief and panic filling her eyes. But there was something else there, too. Guilt, shame, and perhaps the faintest trace of regret. But it was too late. "John, please," she begged, taking a step toward me. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you." Her voice cracked, but I wasn't moved by it. This wasn't about her hurt feelings. This wasn't about some fleeting moment of weakness or an unintentional slip-up. This was calculated. I turned away, moving toward the living room. I couldn't stand to look at her any longer. Not now. Not after everything. "How long?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. She hesitated before answering, barely above a whisper. "A few months." I felt my blood run cold. Months. It hit me harder than I expected. The fact that she had been living this life for months, betraying me while I was working, while I was doing everything to provide for us, to make her happy. "And you never once thought about me? About us?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. Emma's face crumpled, and she fell onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. She couldn't answer. There was no excuse. But the truth was, I didn't need an answer. I had made my decision. The time for apologies was over. I wasn't going to let her off the hook. Not this time. The days following that confrontation were filled with tension. Emma kept trying to call me, text me, show up at the house. But I stayed firm. I had already begun executing my plan, and nothing was going to stop me now. The first move was the hardest, but it was also the most important. I froze our joint accounts. Every dime, every penny was under my control. She would have to beg me if she wanted access to any of it. Her safety net was gone. I watched as she scrambled. Her first call was to her parents. I could hear her pleading with them to help her, but I knew they wouldn't. They couldn't, not when she had shattered the trust between us. But the true payoff came a few days later. I had started gathering the evidence. The video of her with her lover, the screenshots of her texts, even the hotel receipt from that weekend getaway she had taken with him. I had it all. I sent everything to her boss. I knew exactly who to contact. Someone who would be just as disgusted as I was with her actions. Her boss, a man who had always seemed professional and focused, was furious when he saw the video. It was a matter of hours before Emma was called into his office and fired. I didn't even have to say a word to her about it. By the time I saw her again, she had been evicted from her office, her reputation at work permanently tarnished. The humiliation was unbearable for her. She showed up at the door the next morning, her eyes swollen from crying. "Please," she said in a shaky voice. "I never meant for things to go this far. I was confused. But I wasn't interested in her words anymore. She had made her bed, and now she would lie in it. "You lost your job, Emma," I said coldly. "What are you going to do now?" "Go back to him." Her face paled. "John," she whispered, tears welling up again. "I don't know what to do. Please help me. Please." But I didn't offer her any help. Not after everything. I had one more move to make. I had made sure her affair was exposed to everyone who mattered. But I wasn't finished with her just yet. The final strike came when I made sure her lover, David, knew that he wasn't immune either. I sent him a letter. It was simple but effective. Inside, I detailed how he had ruined both of our lives. I included screenshots of their texts, photos of their rendezvous, and one last surprise, a photo of him at a work event where his wife was present. I didn't just send the letter to him. I made sure his wife received a copy as well. The fallout was swift. The next day, David's wife filed for divorce. And I heard through the grapevine that he was losing his job as well. He was devastated. Emma? She was left with nothing. But the most satisfying part? The moment when I realized that the woman who had betrayed me, humiliated me, and shattered our life was now living in the ruin she had built. And me? I was free. In the end, revenge wasn't about getting back at her. It was about reclaiming my life, my peace, and my dignity. Emma thought she could break me. She thought I would beg for her forgiveness. But instead, she had created her own downfall. And I walked away stronger than ever.